Hey folks, welcome to Avocado Gazecast number 69, our nicest episode yet. I'm your host, Merve. You know, just like the rest of the video game industry, we love sequels. And so, we are doing a sequel episode.
Yeah.
That's right, we're revisiting mashups and crossovers, and this time, we're going to play a fun game. I'm going to suggest the wackiest video game crossovers I can think of, and my wonderful guests will brainstorm what they might look like. It's gonna be bonkers. Speaking of my wonderful guests, he's the inventor of the spaghetti sandwich. It's Lutair.
Carbs on carbs on carbs on carbs.
Hell yeah. He thinks cookies are a viable pizza topping. It's Wolfman Jew.
Hey everyone.
His favorite donut is a Boston cream, but with toothpaste instead of custard. It's the Kappa.
Oh, gross. That's disgusting.
Yep, and finally, he's too busy playing with marbles to make weird culinary concoctions. Please give a warm welcome to individualist formerly known as Bresson.
Hey.
So, how are you folks all doing?
Good.
Fine.
Not too bad.
Yeah, it's been a weird couple of weeks for me, but I am glad to get to talk to people about video games again.
Yeah, same here. It's like this is the week where quarantine's kind of finally like, all right, we got to go somewhere. We got to get out of the house. So it's really starting to kind of set in.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing a lot of video games because I've just been kind of stuck in my apartment. I don't know what it's like for the rest of you folks, but I am interested to know what you folks have been playing lately. So, Lutair, what have you been up to game-wise?
So I just got to the surface for the first time in Hades, which is basically an amazing game right now.
Yep.
And then I've been playing a little bit of Among Us with the Avocado kids. But yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we
What's
did an Among
Hades
Us
like?
game.
It's like a roguelike by Supergiant?
Actually, this is Lutair and I have both been playing this.
Playing it, so.
But you go, please.
It's a very popular roguelike by Supergiant Studios. It's like the premise is you're Hades' son and you hate your dad and you wanna head up to the surface. And all of the roguelike aspects are actually really well integrated into the story itself, and that's something I'm really enjoying about it. And it's just so stylish. It's just incredibly stylish.
The the whole nature of the thing, like what makes Hades like the story work, is that basically it's so in roguelikes, you die, you go into this randomly generated area, and you die, and you go back. But that's basically the story, is that you're in the you exist in the bottom pit of the Hellenic version of hell, and so. And the dungeons that basically that are meant to prevent anyone from going to the surface constantly shift all the time. So you basically keep trying to go up and die. So, the roguelike element is baked into the story.
Okay. And is it like every run is independent, or is it more like Rogue Legacy where you kind of build up stats and stuff across runs?
Oh, it's definitely like Rogue Legacy. Like there's some stats that you just keep for the run, and then other stats that you have as permanent upgrades, and you're encouraged to choose between. When you go into a new chamber, you can see what the reward is, so you can choose between things that are experience overall, or things that will help you on this current run.
Okay, so there's a lot of trade-offs and smart choices to be made in any given run through the game.
But it always feels like you're fundamentally getting something. Like no run ever feels wasted.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point, and I think that's one thing that kind of helped some different games stick as far as the Rogue revival has been coming on. Where I think Rogue Legacy kind of was like, well, even if I die in a cheap death, or at least it feels cheap, I didn't feel like I wasted a playthrough. Or at least my playthrough mutated enough to be interesting in some ways. So I think that's a really cool kind of take on the genre where it feels less punishing and more like I don't know how to describe it, more interesting, more a potential for actually getting something cool or neat or different than just punishing the player for dying, because that was one of my big turnoffs in the original Rogue Revival games that were coming out. Was they seemed to kind of really lean into, well, a rogue game is difficult and punishing, and that's it. And that's not really kind of how I remember some of the earlier ones. There was a fun angle to them as well, where death was kind of a way to change up the game in a way.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention that it's, for all that it takes place in this, like, literally Stygian pit, it's very addicting, and it's honestly kind of pleasant to be around. Like, all of the, like, gods of the dead, including the, you're kind of angry, always really diffident, dad boss Hades. It's all just kind of like this really depressing, almost like an office comedy, like everyone who's dead is basically just doing their job. You can actually, one of the main bosses in the game, after you kill her for the first time, you can actually see her in like the lobby, like the hub area.
Just like chilling, like
Yeah.
It's like she got demoted.
Because it's just her job to try to kill you.
Yeah, I think they talked about like the Greek gods as almost like a dysfunctional family, and that's kind of like the angle they were going for it in the game, was that these people aren't really your enemies. It's just like, look, this is just kind of what we are. We're the god of this. We have to do this to you.
Yeah. Greek mythology is basically Arrested Development, but with even more incest.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh God.
I mentioned this when we were talking about when the game was released on the site. I went to PAX a couple years ago, and it was when they were demoing Pyre. I'm not sure if you remember Pyre, but it was kind of like their basketball fantasy game. And they were excited about it, and it definitely was an interesting game. But they were telling everybody at the booth, they were like, "Wait till this next one. Just wait till this next one." I think they had maybe some art for it, like maybe like a stand-up or something, but I don't think it was playable then. Or maybe like they had already like kind of moved on that demo or something that day, but they were like just all saying like, wait till this next. So it's our biggest yet kind of feel to it. And they were talking about the writing alone was like 10 times the writing they've done for other games. And I was like, even more than Bastion, because Bastion felt like a lot of writing, but I guess technically maybe it is. It's pretty linear, But I got hyped for this game very early, and unfortunately I haven't played it yet for some reason, but soon, and I'm really excited. I'm seeing everyone playing it and hearing really good stuff about it.
Yeah, Supergiant's been kind of a blind spot for me, but I'm eager to. I mean, I own both Bastion and Transistor, so I just have to kind of get around to it and get a feel for their games. I'm really glad that they've had success in exploring these various genres. Wolfman, what have you been playing? I mean, you've been playing Hades. Anything else you've been playing?
Well, yeah. While my first big thing lately has been Hades, I've been playing a few things, but the most recent before that was that I finished Cuphead. I started and managed to beat Cuphead.
Oh, nice.
Only was it 3 years too late? No, it's not as we all know, it's not a race over who gets to beat it first. But yeah, Cuphead was as satisfying and exciting and really just incredibly charming as I had hoped. I actually, for people who may have been unfamiliar with Cuphead, it's sort of the like Fleischer early Disney Studios inspired run and gun super difficult game that's notorious for having these unbelievably punishing and exacting boss fights. And I, with a couple exceptions, actually found the difficulty curve to be very fair, and I don't consider myself a particularly good or skilled player, so that was actually a really good surprise.
Yeah, it has this reputation for being super difficult, but from what I've heard, people find it generally a pretty fair game.
I think it and Hades kind of work really well for kind of explaining why, which is that Which is that they're, for one thing, they're very fast. Both games you have very like reasonable loading times. At least on the PS4, Cuphead had almost no load times when you had to retry a boss fight. And they're also really fast in the fights themselves. Like a Cuphead boss fight is really, you're not expected to take longer than like 2 minutes on almost all of them, and most of them can be beat in only 1 minute. And Hades, like each of the different rooms in the big like procedurally generated dungeon, really like a lot of them will probably only take you about 30 seconds. Wait, Lutair, would you agree on that? I feel like
Yeah, except save for like mini bosses and bosses, like most chambers you complete pretty quick. It does increase as you get to like the later areas, like the shields of whatever, where they turn into little spirits after they die, so it's like twice as many enemies essentially. But for the most part, it seems like you see the enemies, you find a strategy, you defeat them, and then you see what loot is in the room and then move on.
Yeah, you do your like, as much as these are like really nicely animated and audio recorded like things, they do their business very quick, and that I think helps make it approachable. Like, I earlier this year I beat Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls 1. I mentioned, I believe, 3 the last time I was on the last games cast I was on, and I love those games, but there is something to be said about the fact that like in those when you die, you start from a save point and you have to trek all the way back to where you were to fight this boss. And like the hope that you can get is that you can come up with some kind of incredibly difficult shortcut that can deal with that a little bit. In these games, it's just super. Everything is kind of done in a very like close way, and that makes it, I think, a lot easier. Although by contrast, Hades specifically does this thing that normally I hate in games, where it has multiple different forms of currency. But that's also baked into this whole thing too, because as you go in, you try to look for the rewards and figure out which of those currencies you need the most or you want the most. So it's just in general, I feel like both games are very good at making what you need to do very clear and giving you the tools to always be able to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And like the diversity of currency kind of it kind of like gives you a little bit of a like gambler's high in a way, where you're like looking for keys or you're looking for gems, and like the next chamber you're like, oh hell yeah, I get 2 of them this time or whatever, and it like it adds a little bit of excitement to just the basic like thing of choosing left or right.
Yeah.
The way I see it, it's almost like instead of thinking of it as currency, it's almost like you need different resources for crafting. And it's effectively the same thing at the end of the day. You're trading in resources for an object.
Yeah. The main currencies in Hades specifically are coins, which you can't keep with you, which you lose when you die, and you basically get them by winning them, by killing enemies and getting them as some prizes. And you can use them to buy certain stuff from shops in the middle of the dungeons. A special type of purple currency that you use to permanently upgrade, and then a few different like more rare ones that you can use to give to characters for special prizes or stuff to unlock secret other areas. And one of those, specifically the prize item, is actually unlocks more of the story by allowing you to interact more with the different characters.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
I call it friend juice. I think it's
That's a good one.
What is the drink of the gods?
Nectar.
Ambrosia. Wait,
Ambrosia. Yeah.
Wait,
There's
ambrosia is the food. What's the
and
drink?
Nectar.
You know what? Doesn't matter. Bresson, what have you been playing?
Yeah, I also been playing Hades, but I'm not gonna go in depth into it. I'm not as far as Lutair and Wolfman, I think. I'm just on the 3rd boss. It's really good. I'm not a big fan of the roguelikes a lot of the time, but it's just like Wolfman says, it's very fast and it's just extremely pretty to look at, and it has like a really good sense of humor. There are like lost souls in the pit you start from, and when you bump into them, you see like how they were diseased, and it's like really funny. But the game.
Sorry, just want to mention, I think I'm actually exactly where you are right now. I'm trying to get to the third boss.
Yeah.
Or I'm trying to beat the third boss.
Yeah, I've just like beat the second one yesterday, and on like Let's Go, I was like 5 rooms into the third world. But like the game I want to talk about, it's like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater remasters, which are fucking great. Yeah. I picked them up recently. I normally don't buy like a lot of recent games because I just play like a lot of old stuff. But for these ones, I shelled out the money, and they're really good. Also, like, it's insane how fast they load on the PS4. My experience with the PlayStation 4, it's like horrible with loading times and horrible with internet connection. But you can go like to create a skater. It's all online connected, but it never lags. You can go like into the menu to like a create a park online. It just loads them up, and you can select them, and like at most 6 seconds you're in the creator park. And it's just a remaster of the first 2 games, so it's like what you accept, and it has like fun challenges to spice it up a bit, but it's like just really good. It's like just original PS1 games in feel and everything. The original soundtracks for both games are there, but there's like even 40 more songs and stuff. This Scream Females are in there, and it's still just a lot of ska.
Yeah, it feels like what they did was they found kind of like more recent skate punk songs and more recent ska songs to go along with the older ones. I think they've done like a good job mixing old and new. They've added some new skaters. They've aged up the existing skaters. They threw in stances, reverts, and manuals, which originally appeared in 2 and 3 for the first time. They put them in the one maps as well.
Yeah, so God bless. It's like the best thing they've done, because I always had the problem with the first one on the original, that I couldn't get like the high scores because I'm used to like write out on a manual to like a kickflip and to a grind. And on the first one you can just like hit those tricks and do grinds. But now you can easily rack like up 300 points or something, 300,000 points.
Yeah, it's been the first game in a while where I can just impress my kid with how good I am at it. And I mean, I'm still nowhere near as good as I used to be. I mean, I used to be able to do million-point combos, you know. But like I'm getting back there slowly, and I'll load in and I'll land like, you know, a real nice line and end it with like a 900, one of the special moves or whatever. He's like, "How did you get so good?" I'm like, "Man, this game used to be my life. I used to play this for hours when I was a teenager. You know, I just come home, turn it on, then play till I fell asleep, basically." So there is a lot of little cool Easter eggs. I think that's one of the things that maybe the series was known for as well. Just all the effort they put into the world and stuff. It plays great, it looks great, runs great, sounds great. I mean, everything you could expect from a remake is done correctly here. So if you're jonesing for that, I mean, even my brother has been calling me up. He doesn't play many video games, but he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna come over for a Tony Hawk session once I get some time off of work." So it's still very, very, very fun. And if anybody's just looking for something for, you know, turn your mind off and listen to, you know, old tunes and skate all day, it's definitely that kind of game.
Yeah, my brother also been coming over. He usually like only plays like Mountain Blade, but he was like, "Yeah, I just want to play stuff." He played when we were like 6 or 7, and it's like still like the co-op is also still so good. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting it eventually because I had a lot of fun with 2 and 3 when I was a kid. So looking to get back into the whole like arcade skateboarding game, because like the genre kind of took a turn towards the more realistic with games like
Skate.
In Session.
Yeah.
Which is one approach you can take. I'm not like knocking it, but I do miss the crazy techniques and the completely out there tricks that no human could actually do in real life.
Yeah, it's funny because I was like playing Skate 1, 2, and 3 earlier this year, and I finished like the career mode on all of them, but it was like de-learning what I was like used to with on a Pro Skater, because it's like, yeah, you need to like shift the stick back forward, like do a half spin, and it's just like, and when I started playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater again, it just felt like so odd that I needed to go back to like arcade settings. It's so much more fun than Skate. Even I really like Skate also, but it's like way more pick up and play.
Even I had to kind of change my mindset when I was playing with the part creator, right?
Mhm.
Like, because like I needed to make in Skate and those other part creators, sometimes you needed to make like very contained lines, you know. But in Tony Hawk, it's like, no, just make crazy, you know, rail to rail, up a ramp, down a ramp. It doesn't matter. You can do it all. So when I was making parks, that was one of my favorite things to do, is just make ridiculous parks where everything's kind of packed on top of together and you can do just insane things.
Yeah, it's notable that a lot of Tony Hawk levels take advantage of verticality, so you can end up climbing by going up these ridiculous ramps and like grinding your way to the top of a building, which is not something that's
Right.
physically possible, but like the game makes it possible, which is just really fun to experience.
Yeah, it's insane because it like never like you get stuck on nothing and you never like glitch out. It's like all smooth and perfect.
Yeah,
It's really cool to see.
absolutely. So Kappa, what have you been playing?
I've been playing a game. It's weird that this is probably like a pretty long running series, and I think I've never heard anyone talk about this series before. Spellforce. Has anyone heard or played or know anything about
Heard
Spellforce?
of it, know very little about it.
Right? Like
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty common, weirdly. And this game has tons of games. I think maybe it might be kind of a more Euro maybe game to it or whatever.
I'm
But what's up?
This is the first time I've even heard of this.
Right.
No,
I think
it's like the stuff my brother plays. He like plays all these like real-time strategy stuff. It's very European. I agree with it.
Yeah,
Because
so I'm wondering if it just never kind of like really hit the cultural zeitgeist or whatever. But
it's
What?
German also. Like Funamic made it like the first couple bits, so it's
Mhm.
just started out like a German like real-time strategy plays, and really looks like that also.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it. Kind of has that very feel to it, like kind of a dark world, but not. I don't know how to describe it. Like, you know, that European fantasy setting where it's very kind of grim almost, but then they kind of approach it with a little bit of humor at the same time, I guess.
Yeah.
So the Spellforce series has been going on for a long time, long time. One, I wouldn't even recommend playing it right now. It's just too old, and there's a lot of, you know, compatibility issues and things like that. So I picked up this series with two. It's a straight up RTS RPG hybrid where you can kind of go into like over the shoulder third person and play it that way, for like the RPG type scenes, where you and your party are kind of going through, you know, killing wolves and spiders and stuff like that. But then the game kind of expands out in a way, and you're building bases and cities and capturing territory. The RTS is kind of similar to, I would say, maybe like Company of Heroes style, where you capture a territory, then you're allowed to build in that territory and kind of fortify it and things like that. And then, you know, there might be like a resource in that territory, or it might just be a strategic area to hold, or a place to, you know, defend and build and things like that. Your characters themselves will get your standard RPG spells, your fireballs and stuff like that, but they also get RTS kind of spells almost, where like you can clear trees, or, you know, make a pile of rocks so that you can get stone if you need it, or things like that. So there's a lot going on in this game series. 3 is probably the most recent. It came out in 2017. First thing you'll notice as soon as you start it, Geralt voices the main character, or whoever the voice actor is. So it kind of takes you out. It's almost like, whoa, what's going on here? It's at a Witcher RTS almost. But the story is very kind of, there's a coven of mages who are doing bad stuff, and they're awakening dark gods, and it kind of builds on itself. It's actually kind of an interesting story. You play the son or daughter of kind of like the big bad evil guy of the
like
series.
trying to stop your dad.
Yeah, so like you've kind of been rescued by this hero general played by Geralt, who stopped your dad's plan to basically destroy the world, and rather than kill you, they're gonna like try to like raise you to be, a good guy almost. And then the game does allow some decisions to be like, am I my dad's kid or not? But there's a lot going on there. A lot of the mages are the bad people. We need to fix them and stuff like that. But the overarching story is pretty interesting. The gameplay is great. This game looks, even for a 2017 game, it might not really look great in screenshots. It's hard to explain. It's kind of got like a Trine effect going on, where you're on the playing world, but in the background there's these beautiful like 3D style art illustrations and drawings and stuff going on. The game looks great while you're playing it. I mean, I don't know if there's a better looking RTS out there. So I really admired that. I was able, to kind of crank everything up. And there's there's always that layer kind of with some of these games where there's just, like, are you going to sacrifice performance for graphics? But I didn't really have to. It runs really well. So they're actually announced a brand new expansion that should be, I think it's a standalone kind of world building expansion, probably leading up to, I would assume, 4. But as a series, like I said, it just kind of has always been something that I've just never heard people talk about. So wanted to kind of let people know if they're looking for a good RPG/RTS, this kind of hits both those at the same time. Real economical buy. I think I bought the whole series for $10 on Steam. So I would definitely give this a check it out if you're kind of looking for something in that mode.
Yeah, it's been one of those series that's weirdly just been under the radar. I keep hearing it get mentioned, but I never knew what it was about. It was just one of those things. It was like, oh yeah, Spellforce is a thing that exists.
Yeah, I think THQ Nordic acquired it. So, they've kind of been bringing like a light to a lot of these series that I think for whatever reasons have kind of fallen out of maybe, like, I would say American purview almost.
Yeah.
But I feel like this might be kind of something that they build off of, because I think they, like I'm talking about stuff like Jagged Alliance or, like some of those old games that just kind of fell off the radar. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with this, because it does kind of feel, at least to me, like it's going to be something like almost like their tentpole Warcraft type franchise going forward, because they've put a lot of effort into making this game look as good as it did.
Yeah, so hopefully they find success with Spellforce 4. It's always nice when a studio sticks with a property for a while, even if it's like not ultra popular.
Yeah, they released like a standalone expansion pack last year, and if I remember correctly, it got like an Oktoberfest DLC. So yeah, it's very German.
Yeah. You notice that as soon as like they pick up in Spellforce 1, I tried it just to see how it would run and stuff like that. And I mean, the characters are supposed to be kind of like elven, like Fey characters. And I mean, like, it is like that hard German accent with an elf just sounds like kind of weird to the ears, because they're used to that very light British, I guess, and it's, yeah, that was the first thing I noticed, but it's still a good series, warts and all.
Yeah. So I've been playing a little game called Yakuza 4, which is which is the 4th game of the Yakuza series, but it's not the 4th one I've played. I played them all weirdly out of order. Like, I started with 0, then played 1, then 6, then 2, then Judgment. So I've kind of been, like, bouncing all over the map of that series, and just finished 3 and recently started 4. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Yakuza, It's these very compact open world games that take place in these really detailed recreations of famous neighborhoods or famous red light districts specifically in Japanese cities, and you play as someone kind of on the margins of society, usually like a Yakuza figure or somebody who's had dealings with Japanese organized crime. Yakuza 4 is a little bit different from the previous games in the series in that instead of playing as just one guy, you're playing as fittingly 4 different guys throughout the course of the story. And so far, I'm only at the second character. I've played through the first character story. I'm at the second one. It's a little different from the other Yakuza games in that most of them kind of set the stakes for the story very early on, and then they give the character a goal, and the next 20 or so hours unfold as the character, pursues some mystery or tries to track down some person, get rid of some bad guy. There's always like a story that runs through the entire game. Yakuza 4, after having completed the first guy's chapters and just started the second guy's, I still don't really know what the story is. It's a little disorienting. But yeah, otherwise, it's a Yakuza game. If you like Yakuza, you'll probably like Yakuza 4. They're all fairly similar. This one also adds the ability to go above ground and run across rooftops, which I know some people are really into.
So is 0 still the one to start with? That's the one thing. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
0 is
sure.
the one. 0 is the one you should start with, and technically it's a prequel. So there's some stuff that it references from other games in the series, but it's not super necessary for understanding what's going on. 0 stands alone by itself fairly well. I don't know. 0 is still by far to me the best game in the series. It has the most kind of coherent story, and also the story that isn't just like a mob. Like it is a mob story, but it also is actually trying to say something in a way that the other games in the series really don't say very much. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like there are plenty of crime stories that don't have a lot of deeper meanings that are still really compelling. But Yakuza 0 has thoughts about Japan
It
in
seems
the
like
1980s. Let's say.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the other ones kind of start on something and then kind of just based on hearing you talk about them, it kind of gets like lost in adding, all these crazy things on top of it almost that it forgets to like get back around to the game. And then it kind of does that in later games or maybe not. But it seemed like, at least when I was hearing you talk about 0, that one seemed like the most complete, top to bottom experience, I guess.
Yeah, I mean they all have like a lot of side diversions, a lot of side content. I think I described it on one episode as what would happen if you mix together The Sopranos and Better Off Ted, and I stand by that description because like there is a lot of wackiness in here. And Yakuza 4 is no exception. There's still quite a bit of wackiness in it, but it is, I think, a little bit more, in some ways, a little more grounded, in some ways, a little more over the top than the other games in the series. Again, it doesn't really feel like the game has started yet, so it's a bit of a bizarre experience just playing it for the first time and not really knowing exactly where it's going. So hopefully it all kind of comes together in the end. We'll see.
I've been stuck on Yakuza 4 for a while because, like, at the start of the third guy's story, it kind of changes gameplay styles. It becomes kind of, I don't want to spoil too much, but it kind of becomes like a weird beat 'em up, and I've just it's so much endless button bashing, and I just couldn't finish it, and I laid it aside. But yeah, back to the stories. I think 3 is also pretty focused for the series with the orphanage.
Yeah, it feels like this big. A lot of what you do in 3 is not like crime related. It's literally just taking care of kids, which is really funny for this series. But it does tell this very, it tells, for the most part, a very focused story that kind of goes a little off the rails at the end. Like the second there's CIA involvement in anything, it's kind of going off the rails. But it is, I think, a little bit more of a coherent story than what 4 has been so far. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. Like I said, I just at the start of the second guy, so I'm in prison now.
As you should be.
that's the start of the third guy.
Wait, then I've only played through the first guy.
Oh, yeah, you go to prison and then you return out of prison and then you go to prison again and then you start the third guy.
Oh wow, okay, fun. Gonna go
That's
through a whole prison.
how I remember it, at least.
Okay,
The game is just
so you go to prison twice.
Yeah.
So the game is just, people going in and out of prison, like an upstairs downstairs thing.
I think it's like a way out, like forward and then backward, like a Michel Gondry music video. That was a deep cut. Anyway, let's move on to talking about some news in the games industry that is important because in a couple of months we are going to have new video game consoles to play with. Or at least some of us will. Those of us who are ordering new video game consoles. I think most of us will probably wait a year or two before hopping on. But the week of November 9th, the Xbox Series X and the PS5 are launching. And they're launching for the same price, $500. Seems reasonable. The biggest news out of all this, though, is that Microsoft just acquired ZeniMax in advance of the launch of the Xbox Series X.
You know what's crazy? I think for as small of a little outlet we are, I think you're probably the first person I've heard actually get that right. Because a lot of people have been saying they bought Bethesda, and it's like, no, they bought Bethesda's parent company. They bought ZeniMax, and a lot of people are missing that this isn't just like a Skyrim Fallout thing. Like, they bought them all. So I think that
huge.
Should be noted, actually. Yeah.
And like, in fairness, most of their games, even from other studios like Arcane and
are under the Bethesda
get published under
label.
the Bethesda Games label. But in acquiring ZeniMax, they also acquired ZeniMax Online. So now they're managing one of the biggest MMOs in the MMO space, just Elder Scrolls Online. That's a pretty good feather in their cap.
Yeah. I think the number one thing that I've heard that I guess people that are kind of like a little bit of trepidation over is, does this mean exclusivity? And I just want to point out, like, the last time this happened was Minecraft, right? Yeah. Like when Microsoft bought Minecraft, that's where everybody went, oh no, Minecraft's going to be Xbox only. Weirdly, you can probably play Minecraft in more places now since since Microsoft bought it than originally. It's been on Switch. It's got crossplay. I mean, so it's hard for me to.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What I was gonna say was like, and also, like Microsoft has over the past few years been fairly liberal with like the concept of exclusivity in systems that it publishes and also even stuff it outright owns. But I don't think it's. So I'm assuming that it's a lot of this won't be purely exclusive, or that even any of it will be purely exclusive, but it's still not great that we kind of have to hope for the grace of Microsoft to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, in a way. I think I would assume that they're going to stick to their word because they have so far, that we want people to play our games wherever they want to play them, know? And I think in a way, I don't think there's any, I think if you had to say, make a bet right now, I'd put $0 down on the new Elder Scrolls, for example, being, exclusive. I don't think that's what they're going to be doing at all with it. I think you're probably going to be looking at a scenario where what Sony's been doing similar to that, where you're going to have exclusive characters or exclusive, timing or things like that, maybe.
I think they'll probably do. I would put good money on a lot of these things being timed exclusives.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Same.
But I think like they'll do probably kind of what Sony did with Horizon Zero Dawn, which is eventually ported to PC.
Yeah, but that took like 2 years, so
Yeah.
So I'm
2 years,
thinking like Starfield will be Xbox exclusive for a year, and then we'll come
some
to
of
PS5
this,
or something like that.
some of this I think is in response to Sony going pretty hard after Bethesda. They had those 2 exclusives, Deathloop and
Ghostwire.
Tokyo. Yeah.
Tokyo,
So
yeah.
and then
yeah.
there was rumors they were negotiating Starfield to be a timed exclusive, which is a big one, you know. And I think Microsoft heard that, saw the relationship kind of growing, and was like, "Yeah, we gotta get ahead of this one."
Go ahead.
Just to make a note, Microsoft and ZeniMax have said that they're gonna honor the exclusivity deals with those pre-existing games.
Yeah.
Maybe they won't in like a couple years or whatever, but yeah.
So I mean that is weird. I gotta think that this is more about putting talent in-house, is what, you know, kind of that idea that they've been saying, because, you know, you've got the ability kind of now. I've heard, I don't know if anybody read Jason Schreier's book about kind of like how Destiny, for example, got made or things like that. But it talks about how, like, when you get put under like a big studio, for example, you know, there is talent, or there is people around you. For example, like for Bungie's case, it was Vicarious Visions, who can help you kind of work through some issues, and you don't have to figure it all out yourself, you know? And I think the most positive thing I can say is when you've got Obsidian, you've got In Exile, you've got Bethesda. I mean, you've got every Western RPG fan's dream team all under one house right now, you know? And the possibilities there are wild. I mean, you can do some stuff if you really wanted to. So that's I think the biggest pro for me is putting that level and that type of talent all under, you know, one house for gamers to kind of like see some real crazy awesome RPGs be made.
I'm gonna actually take the opposite approach to this, which is that there's something I find really just screwed up in the whole affair for 2 reasons. One, that Bethesda/ZeniMax is one of the largest publishers in the world for video games, and that it apparently was bleeding money so fast that it needed Microsoft to purchase it, because this was apparently spurred on by ZeniMax having significant issues with money instability. Is really scary that, like, there's so much instability that even the company that can literally just print money with Skyrim ports, like, that's scary. But also just the whole idea of Microsoft basically now owning, like, I think it's now 23 game studios they own.
Yeah.
It's I think it's really not good when all of these larger companies are just buying up everything else and consolidating into a smaller number of massive, like, teams that you basically, that I think it's poor for the industry, creatively and economically. And I also kind of can't, look at this and not, come to the conclusion that a lot of these companies aren't gonna survive. Like they bought all of ZeniMax's stuff, but we all know that there were studios in there that were having financial problems. Arcane, for instance. And
what I would say for about that, and I'm not like trying to put an ultra positive spin on this, because I think eventually a couple of these studios will end up closing. I don't think the intention right now is to close any of them, at least for the next few years. Like, I see this actually as kind of a lifeline for studios like Arcane and Tango for the next little while, but then eventually some of these studios are going to underperform, and some of these studios are going to do well, and maybe Satya Nadella or Phil Spencer or Matt Booty are going to give them some rope, but whoever comes after them,
no,
probably not.
Yeah, I think that there's always potential in these types of situations to get lost in the shuffle. Like, hey, what does Arcane bring that In Exile doesn't? No, I'm just for example. I mean, obviously they're different studios, but I think there's at least a chance that you can keep things internal and keep people from losing jobs when you have that level of studios in-house. But I think where the potential is most interesting, I guess, for me, would be what do you do with all this kind of like mind or experience, gaming creation experience. If you have multiple studios working on the same game isn't unheard of now. It's kind of more common when you actually like look at who does and doesn't do work on games these days. You might think a game is one person or one studio, but yeah, it's far from that. But I think that this is one of those situations where someone was going to buy. If they were for sale, someone was going to buy them. Is it better Microsoft than EA? I don't know. Is it better them than some weird Vivendi type deal where Vivendi just basically couldn't wait to run a certain company into the ground to sell it? I don't know, maybe, but I have a feeling.
Like, is it better than some like holding firm owning
Right,
it? Oh,
right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
or Tencent or
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what Vivendi basically did with Blizzard. They tried to run him into the ground to drive their stock price down. Weird things like that. They were always trying to get rid of them.
Yeah, think about how much work Ubisoft had to do to fend off a hostile takeover from Vivendi.
yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, once a company kind of raises that flag and says, "Hey, we're for sale," someone's gonna buy them. And I don't know. I've got a more positive vision of the new Microsoft, at least for gaming. I'm not talking about Windows and stuff, than I think a lot of other people seem to. But just from my perspective, if you could say, hey, would you rather Bethesda be owned by Microsoft or Sony? I'm going to say Microsoft, because at least that way I know I'm getting a PC port, right? You know what I mean? Like it might be exclusive, it might be this, it might be that, but I know we mentioned, where I have to be at the good graces of Microsoft to release some of these games to other platforms, but I know it's coming to PC and Xbox, whereas I know Sony has done some stuff lately, like Horizon, but I have zero confidence that Spider-Man game is going to ever hit PC. If you want to talk about having to, be in their good graces or whatever to get a port, maybe we do, maybe we don't, But I'm always been primarily a PC gamer, right? So whenever these consoles started to kind of come into my space, the reason I've always found myself kind of siding with Microsoft, because they've done it. They've said they were gonna, and then they've done it. Whereas Sony has said they've done it and they've dabbled in it, but I don't have any confidence that their big hits are going to hit PC. Whereas I do feel like with Microsoft, not only is it going to hit it, it's going to hit Game Pass.
Yeah, that's been a thing that they've done for the past few years. But it's understandable that people are a little trepidatious about this because, back in the early 2000s, they were promising stuff for PC that just never materialized, and it's only, Phil Spencer came and took over and actually committed to doing stuff for PC that this all kind of changed.
Oh yeah,
but
he's changed it all. He's changed the whole perspective of I think where Microsoft was going to go, and I mean, I think the signs,
I just don't blame people for being once bit, twice shy,
Yeah, sure, sure. But I think if you're not looking at it as a different company since he's taken over, you're kind of not, if you're looking at this as the old Microsoft where,
certainly
where they were
the Matrix years.
When they were on top and they were the leader, and they felt a lot like Sony does now. Do you know what I mean? Like, too bad, you're going to play our games. We've got good exclusives. Come get us. That. Whereas, I feel like where Microsoft went wrong with, remember when they announced the Xbox One, not the original Xbox, the Xbox One, and it was this all online, we're going to kill off, the used market. People weren't ready for that yet. And I think now that we're announcing consoles that are kind of that exact idea, maybe definitely some changes, not the always on, not the DRM check, stuff like that. But, it kind of feels like we're entering this all digital distribution world now. Where something like Game Pass, it makes a lot more sense because it's just how people are buying their games now.
Yeah, Microsoft was, A, they were a little tone deaf, and B, they were 7 years too early to do something like that.
But what's the difference between then and now is right now, if I said, hey, I'm going to go to GameStop and buy this game, doesn't that sentence sound a little weird to you right now? Like, doesn't it? Like, I remember somebody said, yeah, I'm gonna go pick up this game when GameStop opens. I was like, huh? Whereas that would have felt totally normal then. So, yeah,
I'm part of the problem. I order stuff off Amazon,
right,
which has its own horrific stuff going on in the background. But like, yeah, I haven't stepped into a GameStop in years, and I play a lot of fucking video games.
Yeah, we're their target demo. I mean, we always have been, and right now I go into it. It feels more like a Hot Topic that also sells video games. Does that make sense? Like it's just all
Funko Pops and
yeah, like weird T-shirts, and you're like, what game is this from? Oh, it's from a K-pop band. Okay, well, why are you guys selling it in a GameStop? You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not as negative. I'm not 100% sold on this, but what I've been trying to tell people now for I feel like a good year is that even if you're kind of on the fence, they want you playing Game Pass. So that's your entrance. You can get a month of Game Pass for $1, and if you're not sure about it, then hey, it's $1 to try Game Pass. Give it a shot. xCloud is built in. As of next year, you're going to get EA Play for free as part of Game Pass. I mean, I don't know if dollar for dollar there's a better deal, So, yeah,
I mean, I think they're going into that space because they can leverage their Azure cloud infrastructure, and it's something that I mean, the only companies that can do this are Google, Microsoft, and Amazon. Google tried it with Stadia, and they tried a model that looked essentially like the model of an economic model looked essentially like the model of consoles, except for you don't actually get to own anything.
Yeah. All the
Amazon's
negatives and none of the positives.
Sorry?
All the negatives and none of the positives. It felt like, like they could have really, like you're saying, leveraged so much, and it was like instead it's just we're just going to basically give it to you. We're going to feed it to you, but you're not going to get to own it. You're not going to get to really play anywhere type stuff with it. So that was, I think, their biggest mistake.
What Amazon's doing seems to be quite a bit more in line with what Game Pass is doing. So we'll see how Luna shakes out. But again, with these kinds of things, it's once bitten, twice shy. So if Stadia screwed it up, who knows if Amazon will be able to do it. And for whatever reason, Amazon has just not had success kind of popping into the gaming space. Like, what the hell happened to Crucible, right?
Yeah. And I think, well, the ace up Amazon's sleeve is always going to be Twitch, right? I mean, because I know.
I mean, you thought so, but then again, look what happened to Crucible.
Right. I mean, but then I don't know if they've really figured out yet how to leverage Twitch. I think right now they're reliant on paid ad feeling things with their popular streamers who are like, yeah, I'll do this and you're going to pay me. But at the same time, it feels like an ad, and my viewers want me to go back to PUBG immediately after playing this game that you're selling me on, So I think that the idea has to be, how do you organically move the streamers to your games? And Twitch will figure it out. I mean, Amazon will figure it out eventually, but it is a Crucible, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because they have by far the most information of anyone else with the viewership numbers and everything, so they should be able to sort of pick the games that they want, or at least have a better understanding of the market to acquire games that streamers or that will get streamed, but they just haven't seemed to have made a move towards that yet.
Yeah, this announcement that they're getting into like the streaming, I think it's interesting. Game streaming, I should say. I think it's interesting, but I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where I would personally wait to see kind of what that even looks and feels like before I jump all the way in. And I'm probably more positive on streaming than most, but it's more because I don't see the benefit of their delivery system just yet. When
I mean, it's the
same third party games.
The potential is there, and it might be really cool. Like you're watching a streamer play a game, you can instantly just press a button and then be playing it alongside them. Like that potential is there. Whether Amazon will actually leverage it, we'll have to see. My guess is that this is one of those things probably easier said than done. I can, propose it, but then how do you actually implement it? When you lift up the veil and start messing around with the code, I don't know.
And then on like a viewership side of things, like with Among Us, like I would watch streams of that, and then I just bought it on Steam, and Steam is only a click away. It's not like it's significantly more difficult to just open up Steam.
Yeah, and I think I think Among Us might be a perfect example of this, right? Like, would I necessarily play Among Us, want to click a button and play it on Amazon? I mean, probably, but I don't know if that's really a selling point right now. I think more people would probably be more, I don't care where I get or play the game or whatever. I'm more interested in playing with my streamer than I am, easily getting the game, I guess. So that's I still think the lifeline or whatever is how do you get from the streamer to the person's hand, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see how these companies work this stuff out. I honestly, I've made a lot of predictions about the games industry, and most of them turn out wrong. So I don't want to make very strong predictions about what I think next gen will look like and what it's going to do to the games industry. For now, it seems like we're kind of slowly inching towards this more digital future. We're still doing the traditional console thing. We're still doing the traditional PC thing. We'll see where this all goes. I can't really say one way or the other how it's going to shake out. All right, let's move on to the main topic of this episode, which is crossovers and mashups. So a few episodes ago, we talked about some of our favorite crossovers and mashups that we would like to see, series and games that we would like to blend together into a delicious smoothie of ludic goodness. Today what we're going to do is I made just like a random list of games that we could combine together, and I told my wonderful guests, I'm just going to throw these at you and see what you do with them. So I've got a bunch of pairs of games like, what would happen if you stuck Watch Dogs together with Katamari Damacy? What would happen if you stuck Crackdown together with Civilization? Stuff like that. We'll see where this goes. We'll see what wacky ideas my friends can come up with. So first one on the list, let's just start easy. Actually, it's the second one on the list. RollerCoaster Tycoon and Persona. What would happen if you stuck those two series together?
See, I really like this one because I think I would get lost in building the park and then kind of like trying to theme it around the characters, right? Like I think that would be like you go to like almost like a Psychonauts. You go to a land that's themed around that person. I think that would be kind of my own take on it, and I really get lost in designing those types of things. Like when I play. What is it? I want to say Coaster Planet. Is it Planet Coaster or Coaster Planet?
Planet Coaster.
I can't remember. Planet Coaster, yeah.
Whenever this is one of your games of the year, dude.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why I guess. But whenever I play that, like I always try to get like in a mood almost, right? Like, and then design a theme park around that. And I think that's exactly what I would do in this type of game.
You'd vibe really hard. I forget which one of them has it, but I think Planet Coaster has like VIPs that will walk into your park, and then you kind of get rewards for satisfying them.
Yeah,
that's RollerCoaster Tycoon 3 also.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I'm imagining is like expanding that VIP system. So you're like building a playground for like specific people and trying to satisfy their desires, and then if you satisfy their desires enough, I guess they go on a date with you.
Yeah, there's definitely dating in this. I'm not. That's the whole point, right?
I kind of imagine it as almost the opposite, where you build your own like mindscape, and then other people join that and try and like sort of complete it. Like you set up a park that is levels that they have to complete, and if they do that, like you could even have it be online. If they do that, then they can date you. It's a dating app now.
Oh yeah, it's all good.
So like basically you build your own like Eye of the Somnium Files levels, and then people like solve the puzzles.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
If they win, they date you.
I'll be honest. The idea that I had coming into this, or thinking of this, is more conservative. You play a Japanese teenager whose father is the main architect and constructor of an increasingly large theme park that's existing in, I don't know, let's say Kyoto or Hiroshima. And you're like, this person's working on it. It turns out that without their knowledge, all of these different rides are based on the psychosexual Jungian fears undercutting the population.
So it's just like a penis demon ride.
Yes, and so what you do is when you go, you don't actually like explore, you don't actually like go outward to explore the rest of Japan. All the entire game takes place is just on this building compound where they're building these parks, except when you go on the rides, they transport you into the way that the population has changed and morphed their perception of each real world area. So when you eventually solve all these problems, it means that the rides themselves change, and that leads to new types of remixed bonus levels.
What I'm imagining is like you're actually doing the combat while you're on the ride.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, the roller coaster level from Nier Automata? That's what
Yeah.
I'm imagining this is like.
It's like that Toy Story Disney attraction.
Oh
Where
yeah.
like those
what's it
railgun.
called? Toy Story
Yeah,
Mania.
my idea for this was like just make it like a long ghost train and name it the Sewers.
That'd be incredible. But yeah, there's like all these rides now, like especially at Disney World. And we mentioned this on the theme park episode, where like they're combined gaming with the rides. So there's like the Smuggler's Run at Disney World, which is a flight sim mixed with a theme park ride. And yeah, there's this Toy Story Mania, as Bresson mentioned. There are lots of opportunities to kind of combine gaming and riding. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think you could do this in a pretty fun way.
Yeah,
Like
I'm
there
really excited about that actually.
there's like there used to be this one ride at Disney World where you would like vote on the ending of the ride. So I think you could combine that. You could make like dialogue choices while you're on the ride.
Yeah.
Or that Star Wars ride where if you don't do good, you actually get to ride the ride longer or whatever. What was that one? The Star, they just built it.
Smuggler's Run?
Yeah, that's it. I only know it from the Jenny Nicholson video, but yeah, I think someone was saying like if you actually don't do well, like as a team on the ride, you actually ride it for longer, so people go in and screw up purposely, I guess. So that might be something too. Like if you do the ride well, it's almost like a combo rating where you get to ride a different version or something.
Yeah, that could be a fun little way to mix things up. All right, let's try another one. What would happen if you were to mix together Halo and Journey?
Yeah, I'm excited about that one.
Personally, so I enjoyed the first 3 Halo games well enough, but like to me it did always seem like kind of a waste that they have what's this like very big like universe with a bunch of cool aliens and these stories and science fiction drama, but like you're always at the end of a gun. So for me, like the first thought I have is like, oh, it's just kind of like a Halo game where you don't necessarily shoot people, you just kind of like explore this lost world.
Yeah, like especially there are a lot of places, like especially Halo 2 and 3, where you're kind of going through all these ruins. That could be something that would be really fun to just like, explore as like the lone Master Chief, and you don't necessarily have to shoot anything.
Or maybe you're like a Covenant soldier at the end, because the war ends in 3, right? Like the main war.
Yeah.
So like maybe you're like a Covenant soldier who's now like kind of trying to explore like part of where they used to live, except it's now this giant ruin because of the war.
Well, my idea would be almost I don't know. ODST is still one of my favorites, but the audio log story that gets kind of told throughout the course of that game, where Sadie is basically working with the AI director that her parents helped create to escape the city, to escape the Covenant attack, while she's trying to get out of New Mombasa. I always really liked that story. So that's kind of what I was thinking about. This was like basically, kind of end of the war, Covenant has, pulled out, and you're a person working with an AI, kind of just traveling from one point to another. No guns, no anything, just exploring the world, kind of really laying into the effects of this war with this alien colony that's been pretty much fought outside of civilian spaces, I guess, if that makes sense. Like we've never really experienced this is probably one of the few times that audio logs where we actually see like the civilian side of the war, right? So I think that's kind of where you can really explain, like this isn't just something that affected, Master Chief and in cool exotic locales. like a James Bond. Like this stuff has like real world effects. There was an actual war that happened, and people died and cities were decimated and things like that. And I think that would be a really like moving way to explain it, is just to have an AI and one person kind of move through an area, point A to point B, and just kind of the stories that happen along that way.
Yeah, you see a bit of it in Halo 2, but it really doesn't become a part of the series until ODST and Reach. So it's nice to, it'd be nice to kind of get like that hidden side of war.
So I was thinking of like times in Halo where you don't use your gun too often, and the two parts I thought of is like when you're first in the Warthog and exploring, and like you kind of drive between areas, and then you use your gun, but then most of that driving is like peaceful, and you're just on these giant hills that you drive off of all the time and die.
Yeah.
But then the second one I thought of was when you first get to the place, the underground bunker that the Flood is released from. You have a whole section of it where you're kind of just not fighting Covenant. Like a bunch of them are running away from it. So I imagine like a different story where you're on one of the rings, you're not a combat person, and you're just sort of exploring, and then halfway through the game you accidentally open a door that has Flood in it, and now it's a horror game.
Now you just run for your life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's effectively what that level is, right? Like you find the shotgun and you're like, okay, this is my weaponry now. That's effectively what that level is. So it's a tried and true kind of format, just like stretched out into a full game, which I think would be really neat.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next one we should mix together? How about Forza Horizon and Super Mario Odyssey? What would that look like?
The benefit of Mario Odyssey is that it's a big travelogue adventure. So you can basically just you could basically combine it with almost any video game of like, because you're going like from one kingdom to the next, and you get this cool pamphlet. So like combining it with an actual like literal car game is almost too easy. So let's add a little bit extra Mario, and you can now Mario can throw Cappy from his car to other cars, which will allow him to jump between cars, like that astral projecting game, Driver San Francisco. And with that, Mario and Cappy and Peach have to now drive on a car to get from one end of the Mushroom Kingdom.
So he's literally possessing cars.
Yes.
Awesome.
And like you
like Mario Kart.
Yeah.
That would be so cool. Like you're hopping from car to car, and if it's like throw in like the Hot Wheels DLC, so you're like going through all these fantastical like plastic tracks with various different attractions and weird monsters along the way, that'd actually be really dope.
I mentioned it, but there's a game called Driver San Francisco.
Oh yeah.
Which an Ubisoft like sandbox driving game where the gimmick is that you play as a dead cop who possesses cars, and so you can astral project into whatever car you want to. And I'm kind of basically just thinking of that, but like with actual bosses, and like, and sort of these bigger worlds, and you can go off road.
And then also some cars have hats already. So
yes, so you have to hit those cars before you can possess them.
See, I think Forza for me is always about the time trial, right? Like the speed at which you get from one spot to another. So I guess what I would do is I would basically have like paths between the worlds of Odyssey, and you have to hit certain time trials, which unlocks almost like certain types of hats or outfits or something like that. And I think I like your idea a little bit better, because Forza to me is always frustrating about having to get shave a second or two off of a time. So I think I'd rather just be in the actual racing itself than in the pathways to it.
It would make for some kind of interesting gameplay where you have like you're able to transfer between cars and using the hat, but also it's a time trial, so like you have to find the most efficient transfer between different cars and like to find the best path. I think that could make for some cool gameplay.
Yeah, and you could have like choices to make along the way, like maybe the terrain changes. It would be better to take an SUV, but you also want the speed, so maybe you want to possess a sports car. You could turn it into like a whole strategy thing.
What if you could control like a bulldozer, and you can then turn into like Killdozer, that Clint Walker movie, and you could like destroy like a natural barrier, and then you would like switch to a sports car, and then you could jump over it like in a Fast and Furious movie.
So like add a puzzle solving element to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be like it would be. I'm getting like really traumatic flashbacks to the Batmobile puzzles from Arkham Knight right now.
This is also a Mario game, so you've got multiple solutions.
Okay, good.
Just my only thought about like big running. How are those big slabs of rock called? Like the running ones that are in Mario 64?
Oh,
yeah.
Swamps?
Yeah, the jumps. You can like spear eject them, and you can like jump and use them for bridges and lay them down, and you can like drive your car over them.
Oh, like you build the road by possessing the giant paving stone dudes from the castle level.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
That is a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
And the really funny thing is, in Super Mario 64, they have dialogue about how they're tired of being stepped on and driven over. It would be so hilariously cruel. I love this.
Yeah.
Oh man. Let's try another one. What would happen if you were to mix together XCOM and Animal Crossing?
I mean, I think XCOM can work with anything after Mario Rabbids, right? I mean, so I'm not going to rule out it working, but man, I don't know how you put almost any kind of combat in Animal Crossing. That game is just so pure feeling, you know?
Well, you set up your village, but then your village, like depending on who you bring to it and what your relationship is with them, that's your squad, and then you go out on missions.
Yeah. And that's why it's like great, because Nintendo has like 400 of those people, so that if they die, you've got reserves.
Yeah.
Wait, but actually, or what? Yeah, it's hard to imagine the villagers fighting, which is why I'm gonna actually say that the XCOM crossover, it's Animal Crossing but with XCOM aliens, and you basically run this like space colony that's about to invade Earth, and you become friends with all these alien monsters, and you try to like build them up and give them toys and like fish with them, and that will make them stronger when they try to kill all the humans on Earth.
Sounds like some kind of humanist spore.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Maybe you lean into the other part of XCOM that kind of really works, like the protecting, like, so instead of like going to how do they call them, the latest XCOM? It used to be like the alien would land and start abducting and killing people, and you have to like go like do a real fast mission there. But maybe instead of that, it's like, we found a weird butterfly, and you have to like pick your squad really quickly, go there, and there's like a timed mission where you have to like extract the butterfly or something, or a rare fish or something. Just kind of like add like a timed element to it, I guess.
Yeah, like those insect games they're doing now on Animal Crossing, so they already got time stuff.
You know what the Kappa suggestion kind of reminds you of? It's like turn-based strategy Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, there you go. Like the Snorlax is gonna slowly fall asleep if you don't get there in like the right amount of turns, and you've got to like wade through a pile of Pikachus, I guess.
Yeah, like you're trying to make a nature documentary, but you have to position your audio guy and your cameraman and your zoologist all in the right place to get the proper footage. But they each have different abilities to kind of get across the terrain. So it becomes this turn-based strategy thing where you have to position them properly and then make sure the camera's aimed in the right direction, and then you get, I don't know, the picture of the alien or the butterfly.
You have like a squad in Overwatch just to get the right picture, like in case it moves across you. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a really weird game, but you know what? I'm up for it. Let's try another one. Let's mash together Mass Effect and Danganronpa.
Danganronpa is the game where you're trapped in like a high school or something, and you have to like kill each other, or
Yeah, so it's a game where it's the murder game where you win if you kill one of your other classmates and get away with it. So there are a whole bunch of murders, and you have to kind of discover who committed them over the course of the game. And it's otherwise, if you don't murder anyone, you stay there trapped forever until you die. So yeah, that's
I mean, I think you definitely set it on the Normandy, right?
yeah.
And
Oh,
Yeah.
actually, or you set it on we're the Citadel too.
sure.
Yeah.
But I think you play with your relationship levels, right? Because like
Yeah.
Mass Effect always really loves dealing with that, right? So if you build up a high enough relationship level, maybe you don't have to kill that person, right? Maybe they become like your partner almost. But then you have to figure out, like you get to choose your one romance, and then the two of you go around and have to murder everybody else on the Normandy without getting caught.
Or you have to romance someone and then murder them.
Oh, that's dark.
Um,
Well, Caden's the first
I mean,
to die no matter
that's
what. I can't say
basically
Caden,
Oh,
what
yeah.
happens in Danganronpa 1. I just spoiled the plot of Danganronpa 1. That's okay. But yeah, that I think like the idea of setting it in a closed space, like some section of the Citadel or some section of the Normandy, works really well. I wrote this combination down, and then I realized this is basically the setup of Consortium. I don't know if any of you folks ever played that game.
No.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, it's essentially it's an FPS RPG set aboard an airplane, effectively, and there's a murder mystery that you have to solve. So it's essentially just Consortium.
It's just Among Us.
Yeah.
You're just playing Among Us, but with all the like different alien races from Mass Effect.
That would work really well. I would be down for
Sounds
that.
like a really good browser game.
yeah.
yeah, or like a drop in, drop out, like mobile game almost.
One other thought about this crossover is like I'm going to go back to one of the more I don't want to call it disreputable, but one of the more controversial parts of Mass Effect, which is the Paragon and Renegade system. What if you did too many things that were like purely good or kind, you would be seen as a bigger target by the other people trying to kill you, but if you did too many bad things, people would really distrust you and want to kill you really quickly to get back to normal. So you actually want to like hold the actions you do in kind of a vaguely nebulous, theoretically neutral zone.
Yeah, you want to kind of get the target off your back so that you don't get killed by whoever the serial killer is in this game. In Danganronpa, it's always a series of culprits, because you always catch the culprit. So if you get caught, by the way, you get executed in Danganronpa. So, but imagine like Danganronpa with a single serial killer. I think that could work pretty well.
Yeah.
Let's do another one. Let us mix together Turok and Sly Cooper.
Yes.
Turok versus Sly Cooper.
Yeah.
Just imagine having to steal raptor eggs or something,
Yeah. It's also Sly's also like gone through time travel, right? Because like I assume, yes,
Yeah.
and Turok is just that. Like so, yeah. Do we want to
bring
have
them all the way back to the time of the dinosaurs?
Yeah. But actually, do we want this to go like from spiritual crossover to like full crossover where Sly is actually hanging out with Turok?
It could be
Oh, man.
It could be whatever you want it to be.
I
Let your
kinda
imagination
like
run
chasing
wild.
each other.
of like maybe like an asynchronous combat though, where like one person's playing as Turok trying to stop the theft almost,
Oh shit.
and then Sly Cooper's on the other side trying to steal something, and you got dinosaurs kind of as like the neutral third party trying to stop both. Whereas like Turok can murder the dinosaurs, but he has combat. Sly can sneak past the dinosaurs, but if he gets caught, it's over. Kind of like a two people in two different ways trying to have the same goal, and it's kind of like a race.
That'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine someone connecting via because this is the modern video game industry. You can imagine someone connecting via a mobile app to play as what's his name, Benny the turtle,
Yeah,
and
Benny.
direct Sly.
Well,
There.
Go ahead.
All I was gonna say is that I do think there is one thing that this crossover absolutely needs, and that is for a sequence in which Sly Cooper builds a giant bow and uses it to shoot that that staff he has as an arrow, and that's how you kill the final big dinosaur.
Absolutely, you need to go all the way out and over the top for something as bizarre as this.
There was some game that played with I can't remember what it was. It's a very indie game. And I think the idea behind it was one team is invisible and one team is invincible, right? And then what that would look like to play against those two ideas. That's kind of what I'm thinking for this one. But yeah, I would at least more games with dinosaurs is really what I want, no matter what. So go for it. This one's greenlit.
Absolutely. I don't think video games have enough dinosaurs in them. They have Jurassic Park games, obviously, but I want to play as a dinosaur more often. I just want to be the dino.
It's weird how if you said there's not enough dinosaur video games or pirate video games or it does seem like there's these weird gaps, right, with all these very popular for kids to pretend to be or play around with. There's not even a lot of cowboy games anymore, right? I know there's Red Dead and but there's not a lot of games in those spaces anymore. It seems like everything that comes out is a gritty sci-fi shooter somehow for some reason, So
you know what? There's none of. There are no mummy video games.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, you get how's that Xbox 360 game called with the 50 zombie? Chubbs?
Oh yeah,
zombie?
Stubbs, I think what it is.
Yeah, Stubbs the zombie.
Mm-hmm.
You get stuff like that for zombies, but nearly no mummy games. Yeah.
Yeah. Even vampire games are pretty rare since I guess the Blood Omen series and Blood Rain kind of died out. You've pretty much just got Masquerade and I guess that vampire game, but I think that was kind of more of a one-off. But yeah, even vampire games have been kind of phasing out.
There's also very few Wolfman games or werewolf games. There's Bloodborne, Order 8086, if that counts, I guess.
It counts.
Sonic
you might not
Unleashed.
want it to count, but
yeah, but
ideal of
probably the most high-profile one was Sonic Unleashed.
Oof, that feels bad.
Or the 2005 Alter Beast remaster.
Oh God,
yeah, the god awful beat 'em up.
Oh man. All right, let's stick together some more games.
Yeah.
Let us marry Star Fox to the Batman Arkham games and see what happens.
You're gonna have a bat airship, right? Is that
Yeah,
what's gonna happen?
Robin, I've constructed a giant airship, just small enough to manage to go through all of Gotham City and an interspace asteroid.
Now fly through 1,000 rings
Yeah,
for this Riddler checkpoint.
If this isn't crossover between characters, I'm going to assume Slippy Toad becomes the Green Lantern. If it's more of just a theoretical one, I'm going to go with that the main character is both the Batman stealthy character and they're also the spaceship at one person. So you can
Batman fuses with the spaceship?
No, it's more like Batman or Fox or whoever is the main character. Let's say Batman is basically, he doesn't it's not like a Gundam or whatever. It's just he flies in space because Batman can fly in space because this is a space shooter game now. And then when he flies back down to Earth, the game kind of naturally transitions from a on rails space shooter to an actual sandbox adventure game. So you could actually jump in from 0G and fly free fall from space, get back to normal, and then land perfectly comfortably on the top of a building.
So it's like No Man's Sky, but with cities on the planets.
Okay, so apparently I've crossed over 3 games with
That's totally fine.
I think my idea would be to kind of also put in a third game into the mix, and it would be Starlink, right? Where you have the ship, so that is like its own character almost, like so Star Fox. Then you have the people that plug into the ship, the pilots that plug into the ship that give the ship different abilities, right? And then I would just be really crazy with like tertiary Batman characters. So if you, for some reason, like Lego Batman it up, and you can, plug in, I don't know, who's a random Nightwing into
Polka
it, like
Dot Man.
all of a sudden the Star Fox ship can be invisible or stuff like that. But just really kind of reach back into that like weird Batman back series of characters and mess with that, and then just plug them into like a Star Fox game. I think that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah.
What would Calendar Man do?
Oh, I know exactly.
You'd like
Calendar Man
travel
would be...
back and forth in time, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, no. Calendar Man would be... You know how in Animal Crossing you have the characters who only show up on certain holidays? That's Calendar Man. He's basically like, he's the character who exists to make sure that you play games on certain like holidays, because you won't be able to get your Thanksgiving themed ship if you don't hang out with him on the last Thursday of November. But then so that's basically Calendar Man. He's a very weak enemy who gives you free DLC skins for your ship.
Yeah, then you've got Oracle, who like shows you where all like the hidden like Easter eggs are. Like like as soon as you plug Oracle into the Star Fox ship, now you can see the weird Easter eggy things that pop up only for her character. Batman's got a trillion characters, so you never run out.
Yeah, you can do this forever and ever. So let's try another one, and the only reason I'm bringing this one up is because I think I have an idea for it. What would happen if you mixed together Portal and Tropico?
You should go though. I want to hear your idea.
Oh, my idea is that instead of being like a typical like fake Latin American dictator, now GLaDOS has to run a colony somewhere for some reason, and so you're effectively controlling GLaDOS in like a satirical city building sim where if the peons aren't behaving as you want them to, you can just subject them to neurotoxin and start over.
And that would be really fun, actually. And like you basically make a series of like tests for them, Yeah. And it's like, you guys aren't performing within my standards for, capitalism. time to electrocute you until you do. I think it's a cool idea. I think like you can kind of maybe mix in a little of that like idea that like GLaDOS is just messing with people because she can. And Tropico definitely has some of those feelings as well. Like, El Presidente just kind of does stuff because he wants to. So I think with GLaDOS you can kind of combine those two and just really make a series that just kind of like the poor people who are subjected to these, jerks kind of constantly.
Yeah, Tropico, to what little I know of it, is kind of like a satire about the kind of exploitative nature of banana republics, and Portal is also like a satire about the exploitative nature of like clinical science labs. So, like, it kind of makes a lot of sense that GLaDOS would somehow end up in this like new place that's basically just filled with other people to abuse. But what if the Portal technology was like used on a larger scale? Like you have to manage people by using, like if you thought it was hard using like one blue and orange portal, what if you had like 1 billion you had to organize?
Yeah, or like one giant one, and you had like the superpowers competing to like appease your island because you can basically, teleport an entire army into the other's back door. So like rather than you having to try to get into the good graces of what is it in Tropico 6? I think it's like the Allies, the Axis, and then later on the capitalists, and then, obviously the communists. So I think that'd be kind of an interesting angle too to take with it, is like everybody trying to make you happy rather than you trying to do the other thing.
Except
I was thinking like a lot more like smaller scale, in that you'd use the portals to enhance your city or whatever's transportation system, but then you could like fuck it up and like move portals while a bus is going through them and like chop a bus in half by accident.
That's pretty dark.
I was thinking, what if it's a Portal game that's a prequel to Portal 1 and 2 that you play as Cave Johnson, and this is how he made his money in order to set up Aperture Science.
Yes.
Like instead of like a Banana Public theme, it's got or Banana Republic theme, it's got like a theme where it's like just weird science, you know, like with an exclamation point at the end of it, and like he's just doing all these weird experiments and like creating all these weird inventions, and his people are like subjected to it rather than like being a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be a lot of fun. I think there are a lot of fertile ideas because they've got kind of a similar tone, these two games. So there's lots of ways you can kind of like mash them together in a fun way. Let's try another one. Let's do something that's.
Wait a minute. Time out. Are we doing like crazy game mashups because it's episode 69 and we're trying to smash them together? Is that what is that the theme?
Well, I mean,
Did I
it was
just
like
guess this?
67 when we first did the crossover episode, right?
I just want to make sure because I
didn't even think of that. I don't even associate 69 with sex stuff anymore. I just see the number 69. I'm like, oh yeah, nice, 69.
Nice.
Ah.
I don't even like think about sex
sex.
position.
How convenient.
So let's try Max Payne and Jet Set Radio. What would that look
Man,
like?
all I can think about is that dumb mid-poop face, like grinding on a rail for some reason. Like, that's just that face. But yeah,
a prequel. It's Max Payne when he was younger, and like it's a skateboarding game, right? Or
it's like a roller skating game.
Rollerblading.
Oh, okay. Perfect. That's even better. When Max Payne was young, he was really into rollerblading, but he was still Max Payne. So teenage Max Payne now grinds hard on the streets of whichever city he's in, killing all his targets with
New Jersey, somewhere.
I feel like the last one was so easy because the tone was so, and then this one is the exact opposite, right? Like it is the grittiest of grim dark mixed with like the happiest ska infused.
What is the soundtrack for this game?
Oh yeah.
It's ska. It's a lot of ska.
It's ska, but performed live by someone who has a visible glum face.
It's like ska, but they only play like they shift the pitch or something, so it's only like downbeat or like minor chords. Mopey
So it's like
ska.
old school Streetlight Manifesto.
Yeah.
I just want to make it like a skating game with bullet time.
Yeah.
It's like when you like get some air, you can hit bullet time and you can slow down and you can like do a sideways trick or just hold yourself in the air and make sure you land correctly.
I always focus in on that strained face because I can't. That face will always be Max Payne to me. That's the only thing I've got to have that.
Yeah, he has to be like kind of making that grimace every time
Yeah.
he goes and like does a shot. So I imagine you combine the shooting and the rollerblading and the bullet time, like Bresson suggested, and it becomes this like balletic, third-person shooter where you have to kill other rollerbladers, but it also has a bizarrely grimdark tone for some reason, even though you're rollerblading everywhere.
It's just becoming a grasshopper game right now. So
Yeah, it is. It also reminds me a bit of I Am Pedro.
It would basically be like I Am Pedro. So what I'm thinking of in terms of like really like a tonal mismatch between gameplay and story, I'm thinking of like Mirror's Edge Catalyst, where the story is so super grim, but you're like running through these pristine white environments and like parkouring everywhere and doing all these incredible tricks.
Maybe you can do it like I don't know, maybe like incorporate some Dark Souls into it, and like Max Payne is the invader. Like so you're just happily grinding around listening to ska, and then all of a sudden like this like very dark doom metal starts playing, and that there's a Max Payne in your game, and he's trying to end your endless grind combo, and you gotta like
that would work so well with actually like spoilers for the story of Max Payne 3, that works so well because Max thinks he's doing the right thing throughout Max Payne 3, and then he realizes, oh shit, I've been used. And so, like, Max is invading your game in your happy fun times and thinks he's doing the right thing. And you have to convince him that he's mistaken and that he's being used by stronger forces than him.
And here's the thing: if you sign up to play as Max Payne, you immediately go on like an FBI watch list because you're a complete psychopath.
I'm assuming that like if you're not playing as Max Payne, then he appears like in a procedurally generated way, like Mr. X or the alien from Alien Isolation.
Right? Yeah. He just shows up. He's inevitable. Like once you hit like a certain happiness level in the game, like you're really enjoying it, that's when he shows up.
Oh, I got a better idea. You got like the anti-copy stuff they had for God, how's that Croatian game called? Like the shooting game. Max.
Serious Sam.
Yeah, Serious Sam. When you use it there and you got an illegal copy, you get like an unkillable beast. So my idea is you got like a time trial and it runs out after like 2 minutes. And after 2 minutes, it just spawns a Max Payne and you try to outrun it and do more tricks. Till it catches up and it's just outright murders you.
Imagine if, like, during, like, mid-trick, like, you're playing the skater, and then Max Payne puts you into bullet time. Oh, that would be so annoying.
No.
That'd be evil.
Okay, but I was thinking, like, a little bit the opposite, where you're Max Payne, and he's, like, post-Max Payne 3, he's retired, he's just trying to live his life, and then all these skaters show up, and his only solution is to murder them.
So
because they graffiti his house.
Yeah.
John Wick. That's John Wick, right?
Well, I mean, except that, you know, instead of killing a dog, it's just kind of enjoing life outside of his house.
No.
They graffiti his dog?
Yeah. He comes out and starts telling some grim story about how he lost everyone he's ever loved, and you're just like, don't care, crank up the gold finger. I'm going to hit some gnarly grinds.
Oh, God.
Just paint the dog neo pink and just leave it like that the whole game.
I'm also thinking that if this is old Max Payne doing all these sweet tricks, then there has to be a thing about how like kids these days don't know anything about roller skating or rollerblading.
Yeah, he solemnly swallows half a bottle of painkillers and then puts on his rollerblades.
Yeah, like this used to be real, man, not about corporate nonsense.
Oh yeah, that would be fantastic. What would happen if we mashed together the Elder Scrolls and Yakuza?
Ooh.
Oh.
The Yakuza.
Even longer dialogue trees.
Pardon me?
Even longer dialogue trees.
Oh yeah.
For 45 minutes.
So I assume that there's never been an Elder Scrolls character as good as Kazuma Kiryu. So I'm going to say that we should orbit this around Kazuma Kiryu not being in no longer Japan, but in some kind of magical far-off land of, I forget the continent of... Tamriel, yeah. I've always thought the Black Marsh sounded cool because it's like a giant marsh and you get eaten by, like, giant fish to move around. But, like, he could be anywhere and it could just be like, this is our land and these are our cultures and these are the Daedric gods we worship, and he's just, like, kind of not really invested in all of this.
See, I thought that, you know, the kind of like the pinnacle clan of assassins in Elder Scrolls is the Dark Brotherhood, right? So if you were to set it in the Dark Brotherhood, except like not only is it the Dark Brotherhood, but you've also got to like completely, I don't know, like when you go to pull off your murders or your assassins, you have to almost like completely take on the life of the person, including like ridiculous mini games where you're like a bard at a inn trying to like perfectly play those super somber Elder Scrolls songs, or like, you know, you're reciting the Lusty Argonian perfectly and things like that. I think it's just go crazy with the mini games.
Karaoke.
Yeah, exactly.
A karaoke mini game.
It almost like I feel like there's probably a mod to like Morrowind that's similar to this, where you just have a bunch of like little things that you can do, and you can start controlling more areas of like the what are they called, the like Plague Lands or whatever.
It's definitely like how do you get more mini games to me in my head in Elder Scrolls? And I think you got to set it around kind of like a very specific function. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, they got lockpicking, so that's kind of a mini game. I think I mean with mods you can do anything. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
modders, get to work on this. I'm
Yeah,
sure it would be.
I feel like that's something that the Elder Scrolls could use more of is mini games. Like,
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
a lot of it is very like just the same thing, the same type of gameplay constantly. But
you know what I've always liked? There's a lot of games that do this now where like there's like a system to casting magic rather than just clicking a button and you cast, whatever. I always like that idea of like you move your mouse in a certain way or like almost like a DDR screen pops up and if you do it right, you cast the ultimate fireball or something. So maybe that's how you do it.
yeah.
All right. Well, let's do one final mashup. What would happen if this is going to be the meetup of the Noids? Metroid and Arkanoid. What would that look like?
Oh man, I think this is a good one because I think the number one thing so Arkanoid is Brick Breaker, right? Yeah. So I think the thing is you got to have Samus in the ball suit, right? Or what is it called? Right? So
the morph ball,
So it's kind of like this series where Samus has to escape from kind of like a planet where it's on blockade, and her ship has this ejecting technology. So you're actually shooting Samus out every time you bounce that little ball around, right? But you can transform once you get kind of, how you get past that back line of ball and it just bounce and bounce and bounce and it feels really good, right? I think you can transform into Samus once you're on level ground and start maybe like shooting aliens above you. So you kind of throw in like the whole combination of both games. But yeah, I think Samus in the ball suit I think is probably the most fun thing you can come up with.
Yeah, I was thinking something. I don't know if you folks have played Yoko's Island Express. I'm thinking of something like that where there are kind of segments where you have to turn into Morph Ball Samus and then start like breaking parts of the terrain to unlock new areas. But it's really hard to kind of control her. So it becomes kind of like Arkanoid. That's what I was thinking about.
For me, like stylistically and tonally and everything, Metroid is a series that's really defined by being underground. Like you're in caves and you're like going down further and further, and every time you like try to go up, it just kind of sends you down again. It's really good at the sense of like kind of low key claustrophobia, and I think like combining that with Breakout feels very natural since you're literally trying to break out back to the surface. And so I think that like there is I would really push this effort on like either trying to like create this sense of like capture and fear in when you start, and as you go on you feel more and more empowered. And maybe what you would do is you would have the Metroid upgrades hidden in certain blocks. And so you would want, because one of the things like, and maybe this is just for me, like whenever I play a Breakout or a various Breakout clone, the first one I played was Alleyway on the Game Boy, like I don't really put a lot of like strategy into hitting the right ball. It's more just making sure it doesn't fall down. So, but like maybe if there was an actual incentive to try to like time your shots better, like I think that might be kind of interesting because you'll always get them because you have to break the whole wall. But trying to actually encourage you to play maybe somewhat more smartly, I think could be interesting.
Yeah, I think that you could kind of set it up so that you set certain like both temporary and permanent upgrades in certain patterns of blocks. And like temporary upgrades could make it easier to clear a certain wall, which might open up a new area where you can get a permanent upgrade. Like you could set this up in a way that it like has a Metroidvania type structure, but you're kind of mixing traditional combat with this Arkanoid kind of setup.
Yeah.
I just want you guys to know that when this topic first started, I Googled Arkanoid because I wasn't sure what it was at first.
Yeah,
And
I did too.
the paddle is a paddle-like craft named the Valse. So that's a fun fact I learned on this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one who was unfamiliar with the term Arkanoid.
Yeah, I probably should have just called it Breakout because more people noticed that, but I wanted the meetup of the oids.
Oh yeah, that was a good call.
So, with that, I think it's time to call this episode to a close. Thank you so much for having fun and mixing together all these wonderful ideas. If you'd like to keep up to date with the podcast, you can follow us on our website at avocadogamescast.wordpress.com, where we post each episode along with a link dump that fact checks the things we say on here. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes. Just search for Avocado Gamescast, and make sure you check out the community that spawned this podcast, The Avocado, at the-avocado.org. So, thank you folks for having this chat with me today. I think we got to some pretty cool places. We made some pretty cool games. People should hire us. I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.